Muscle Dad is right. Finding the right person is hard. You know, for a while, I've been telling myself there's no such thing as soulmates. But now I'm not so sure. Look at Muscle Man and Starla. It's like they were designed for each other. So where's my soulmate? Are they in this room?
This never should have happened. Regular Show is one of my favorite shows of all time, but with that, there are certain episodes, plot lines, and character arcs that I genuinely think are atrocious. And that's fair with any show, and don't get me wrong, I'm not an experienced writer. These guys could write circles around me and tell the greatest story of all time before I've even wrote down the first sentence. But I have the ability of hindsight in looking at the series as a whole and discussing little bits and pieces that I think would be a great improvement to the overall story. And I'm not really going to be paying attention to the creator's moral implications, like telling you a lesson. For example, Mordecai and Margaret being a story of what you should not do in a relationship. I'm not really going to be focusing on that because I hate the love triangle and the majority of the audience also hates the love triangle, so I'm not going to be trying to tell that same lesson. I'm just going to be trying to improve the story overall, improve the characters, and overall make season 6 and everything before that a lot more enjoyable, as well as many other parts of the series. And if you like videos just like this, please make sure to like and subscribe. At 30,000 subscribers, I'm going to be cosplaying as Muscle Man and doing a hot dog eating contest. And if you want a place where you could talk about your favorite cartoons, movies, games, give me ideas, or just hang out, my Discord will be in the description. Let's get started. Now, this video is going to be mainly hypothetical with a lot of different branching paths that we could take for these characters, but one of the biggest characters that I think truly needs to change for the story to overall be better, for the arcs to be more enjoyable, is Margaret. And I am a day one Margaret hater, and I will stand by that. I do not enjoy Margaret, but that doesn't mean that I don't think she could have been a character. There are multiple times throughout the series that they could have chosen to develop her into an interesting person, but they just chose not to. And in my Margaret video, a lot of people commented like, oh, you didn't understand that she actually was a cool person. She liked music, she wanted to go to school, she worked at the coffee shop, she wanted to be a reporter. All of those things make her a unique, interesting character. I disagree. Because every single one of those things was never her telling you that she actually wanted to be any of those things. Every single time, it was always reactionary to what other people were doing. And honestly, in season 1, I think Margaret is fine. Her just being, Mordecai, meet my boyfriend. I think that's okay. I think that's fine. I think it's a good running joke to have in the first season because we didn't need a character to be anything more than that. There wasn't enough time to focus on developing an actual romantic interest. But once we go into season 2, and season 3, I feel like they should have started to develop more time to actually give Margaret some character. For example, in one of the episodes where they could have chosen to make Margaret a little bit more interesting is in the episode Caffeinated Concert Tickets. This is still in season 1, but it could have given her a little bit of character to where, you know, they're talking about fist pump, and Margaret could have come over already wearing a fist pump shirt, and she could have initiated the conversation talking about fist pump, but she doesn't. She immediately reacts to the fact that Mordecai and Rigby are talking about the concert. So, Margaret likes music because other people are liking music. That doesn't mean that she didn't already like music, she obviously does, but her responses are always in reaction to what everybody else is doing. And then go into episodes like It's Time, another episode where they could have developed that she actually wanted to go to the movie, she was super excited for it, but again, they don't really do that because Rigby is talking about zombie party, dinner, whatever, the movie, and then Margaret is all like, oh, I love that movie, and then she's super excited when Rigby has the tickets. It again is only in reaction to what Rigby is doing. So Margaret just never really has a character, and then we get some little hints here and there that she is going to go to school, but I really would have loved at least one segment because she's in so many different episodes where she explains like her dream to be just like her dad, to start reporting, to be on Chopper 6, to do all of this different stuff, and obviously they hadn't thought of all of this at the time, but there were many moments in the series where they could have been like, okay, why is Margaret going to school? Why does she want to do this? What does she want to become? And they chose to just specifically not develop any of that and just give small hints like every 10 episodes that, oh, Margaret wants to go to school, or like, oh, I'm doing essay papers, or oh, this, that. They never really focused on the actual fact that she was a person with interests, and that leaves Margaret just feeling so shallow and so dull, and I understand that that was the point in the writing, but I feel like it would have been a way better character and way more enjoyable for her to get with Mordecai if she was actually an interesting personality. And then you go into episodes like Bad Kiss, where for the very first time they actually do kiss each other, and then Mordecai, of course, has bad breath, which ruins everything. But Mordecai, at that point in the show, should have now known that Margaret has feelings for him, obviously, because she leaned in to kiss you, dude, and the only reason she didn't like it was because you had bad breath. But then they still go on to give you so many episodes that are just feeding and building up to the relationship, even though Mordecai knows if he just makes a move, it'll all work out. So for the majority of season 3, he's just sitting there pulling a Mordecai, and I get that that's part of his character, but they could have went so much deeper with it so much quicker and made the entire relationship more enjoyable and make it so you can enjoy it more when she comes back and make you actually be like, okay, do I want Mordecai to choose Margaret or do I want Mordecai to choose CJ? Because if right after Bad Kiss they decided to do, I don't know, meteor moves like right away, and Mordecai was just stuck in that friend zone, but he was able to get out of it, kiss Margaret, and develop the relationship, then we could have had a whole season before Stake Me Amadeus where their relationship is actually growing. Can you imagine if TGI Tuesday was when they were dating and it was just a sweet thing for Mordecai to do for his girlfriend, or Death Bear where they're just hanging out at the like abandoned zoo talking about their feelings with each other? I don't know. There were just multiple times that they could have chosen to develop Margaret and develop Mordecai's relationship with Margaret to a actual point where you care about Margaret as a person. I feel like even if they decided to do this big breakup and go into season 6 where Mordecai is now dating CJ, I feel like it could have been a lot better because it would have been more enjoyable for you to be like, oh, I just don't know who I want Mordecai to be with. Do I want him to be with Margaret? Do I want him to be with CJ? What would be a better choice? Because instead it just felt like, oh, I want Mordecai to be with CJ, obviously, because Margaret has shown me nothing of interest. She is just so shallow, so not interesting, that there's not even a choice about it. You immediately don't understand Mordecai's choices, and you decide that you're going to hate him for it because he just continuously makes the most horrible choice because Margaret just is not worth his time. There's no reason to go after Margaret, so we can't even relate to Mordecai in the situation. So all I want from Margaret in the first few seasons is for her character to actually be developed, so she genuinely has a character. It would make everything hit a lot more. It would make the breakup hit a lot more. It would make Mordecai having to get over her a lot better in Laundry Woes. You could understand why he had to go and smell that sweet succulent sweater. You could understand why he feels all these emotions, why he has to go to the college to deliver it to her, because you got to watch seasons of buildup and understand why they were able to fall in love. I think the approach of making her so shallow and so dull is a hindrance to the show because I can't relate to Mordecai. Some of the best things in regular show is being able to relate to these characters in just such chaotic situations, but I can't relate to Mordecai's desire to be with Margaret. And then going into season 5 when he's developing that relationship with CJ, you could see them actually forming a bond, connecting, and you could relate to Mordecai's desire to be with her. But at the same time, you get those little hints that he still has feelings for Margaret, like in the episode I Like You High, where he has this big speech where he still has feelings for Margaret. He doesn't understand it, but he'll see something or he'll smell something and it'll make him think of her even if he doesn't want to. And is it right for him to date CJ if he still has feelings for Margaret? If Margaret actually had developments and we actually got to see a lot more of her character, I feel like I would be able to understand where Mordecai is coming from in this episode a lot more. And it would have painted that picture of Mordecai should not date CJ because he still has those feelings for Margaret even better, because you could understand how good this relationship was. But the choice to make it shallow, it doesn't let any of these moments actually feel like they hit. And then going into Merry Christmas Mordecai, I still could never once understand why Mordecai would want to go back to Margaret, because she just wasn't a character. There was no time in the series where I could be like, wow, these two relate so much. Wow, they're so interesting together. Wow, I understand why Mordecai would have all these feelings and would kiss Margaret at that party. I don't get it. And that's Margaret's biggest hindrance in the show, and something that I wish they decided to change, which would be to give her an actual character. And then just going into further episodes, they just kept making it worse and worse and worse, with Margaret saying, oh, I have a boyfriend. Oh, I still like Mordecai. Oh, and then just a few episodes later, they decided to just be friends after Margaret was continuously, after she came back, trying to get with Mordecai just basically nonstop. It's just not that enjoyable. But one thing that I do think would have made this a lot better and would have made me understand a few things more is if after Stake Me Amadeus, we got maybe a 1 to 2 minute conversation with Mordecai and Margaret discussing that they don't want to do long distance, or maybe seeing that Mordecai wanted to, or Margaret didn't want to do, or vice versa, whatever it might be. Missing that one conversation leaves a lot of things open when you discuss like, oh, Maybe Mordecai was waiting for Margaret because they talked about it. Maybe just Margaret was always wanting to come back with Mordecai, but Mordecai thought doing long distance was going to be too hard. There's just so many questions that we never got answered, and I feel like that 2-minute conversation could have helped a lot. So overall, Margaret needed to develop her character, and when she did come back, I just would have liked reasons to actually root for her, especially in season 7, after they decided to give her local news legend a whole episode all about her. How am I supposed to enjoy this character when she was gone for an entire season, had no character developments, comes back, cheats with a main character, and then you're just gonna give her her own episode? Yeah, didn't enjoy it. I think Margaret could have been written way better. Now, CJ is a very interesting character because I honestly think there are 2 different branching paths that you could have chosen that would have been better than what we were left with. I think the introduction of CJ in Yes Dude Yes is actually really good. It's a great example of just Mordecai being really dumb, but also plants the seeds for this amazing girl to come back later, because CJ just likes everything that Mordecai likes. They actually seem like they have a connection, and for CJ to just leave just in that episode and we don't see her for a while, it makes the shock of her coming back in season 5 hit a little bit more. And I think the season 5 build of their relationship is actually really good. It's slow with them becoming friends. CJ shows genuine interest, and then we have them actually going on dates, real date, where they just are seeming like they could fall in love. Episodes like Maxin' and Relaxin', where it improves CJ's relationship with Mordecai while also helping him improve his relationship with his mom. Same thing in Daddy Issues, but vice versa with CJ and her dad. Just good stuff. It feels like a wholesome relationship. But then you get to Merry Christmas Mordecai, and there's 2 different ways they could have went to make this a little bit better. I think for one, you could have had Mordecai just, struggling with the fact that he has to see Margaret again, but overall being able to overcome that and choosing to be with CJ. And then you could have just had smooth sailing a couple relationship episodes here and there. CJ could have went to space and been a pivotal role in all of that with her cloud powers, fighting anti-pops, fighting whatever. It could have been really cool to see CJ in space, and I think she could have went down as one of the coolest regular show characters. Genuinely, she could have been on par with Eileen for how good the relationship build was, and for Mordecai's growth as a character being willing to choose her. But that was not the path they decided. They chose to have CJ get cheated on. And what I hate so much about this is that we get the episode Sad Sacks, which I think could have been a great episode for CJ to stand up for herself, and that's not what we got. We got just 11 minutes of Mordecai trying to do everything to get her back, and then CJ choosing to take Mordecai back. I think this was a horrible decision. I think it would have been a way better lesson for Mordecai if CJ, even at the end of that episode, still said, no, you broke my trust, I can't trust you ever again, and I don't want to be with you. I think that would have been way better for CJ and for Mordecai, because Mordecai could have went on a journey of self-reflection, learning about what he really wants in life, and his decision to take it easy on relationships right now and focus on himself would have felt like a actual genuine arc, instead of just roping CJ along just to string her along to all of this nonsense, forcing her to stick around, forcing her to get back together with him, and ultimately breaking up with her again, just constantly breaking her heart over and over again. And then Mordecai doesn't even actually learn his lesson at all, at least it doesn't feel like that, because his revelation in Just Friends that he wants to take it easy on relationships right now, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't feel like he's actually reflecting on anything. It just feels like he doesn't want to be with Margaret because Margaret kept lying and assisting, and CJ just looking like a villain and all of that stuff. So it never felt like Mordecai actually learned anything. If it was right after this moment, right after he cheated on CJ, tried to get her back and failed, I felt like it would have been better. I really do. So I would much rather have had the writers write CJ in a way where she just stays on the show. Mordecai and CJ have a great relationship all the way up to the end, and then maybe they could break up off camera and you could still be with Steph or something, because relationships are hard, I don't care. Or you could just have them actually stay together, which also would have been interesting. Or I would have preferred right there at Sad Sacks for her to say no, and CJ goes off and does her own thing without getting her heart broken again, and Mordecai genuinely learns and becomes a better person, which completes his arc of the relationships. Now, one important aspect of regular show is the rejection letter. Rigby forging Mordecai's rejection letter to College University is one of the most heinous things that Rigby ever did. And even though that was fixed in the movie and they talked about it and they became friends again, I wish that this plotline was explored more, especially in season 7, because Rigby truly did hold Mordecai back. And it's debatable whether Mordecai would have still ended up at the park, would have went to College University without Rigby, or would have just stayed behind and hung out with his bro. We don't know, but Mordecai's choice to go and do something with his life was taken away from him. which is why the plot in season 7 would have been so much more enjoyable if we actually got to see the rejection letter come into play, especially with Mordecai just getting so angry that Rigby is graduating high school and getting his diploma. Because at that point, his only reasoning for being mad at Rigby is, oh man, I can't believe you're on my level now. I've done nothing with my life for the past 7 years. I just feel so horrible and I'm taking it out on you because you're going out of your way to better yourself. That is Mordecai's arc in season 7, just being angry at Rigby for becoming a better person. That is so horrible. If I was doing something to work on myself to become a better person and I looked at my best friend for praise or for them to be happy for me and they said, wow, I hate that you're doing that because now I'm not better than you. That is just so horrible. It doesn't feel like a good arc to have for one of my main characters. It doesn't feel enjoyable. And yeah, you could be all like, well, Mordecai was better than Rigby, and Rigby used to be so horrible, and now Mordecai hasn't done anything, so of course he's going to be angry about it. No, that's stupid. But something that genuinely would have improved this entire situation and made it make all the more sense is if in that talk, when they're talking after Rigby's graduation day speech and he's bombing, if they were talking and instead of Mordecai being like, oh, I kind of liked when I was doing better than you all the time, instead of that, it was going to be like, I know that I've had so many years to improve myself, but I can't help but to think that you writing that rejection letter is truly what's holding me back from being the best version of myself. And then we could have gotten another apology from Rigby, just a good bro moment where they're both able to come together and Mordecai is able to accept that Rigby is becoming a better person. And even though Rigby held him back, Mordecai still had time to fix his life and to go out and do things. And Rigby truly is sorry, and Mordecai is able to accept Rigby and truly forgive him for the rejection letter, because it would make more of a sense for Mordecai to still hold the grudge, because that is something that genuinely held him back from having a choice for so long. And it would have made this entire scene so much more impactful if they used the rejection letter here. It would have made so much more sense instead of Mordecai just being so petty and narcissistic and actually being a dumbass. It could have been so much better with just adding the rejection letter into Mordecai's thought process on why he was angry, and it could have strengthened their friendship even more to give one more true apology. I honestly would have loved some more clues to the fact that Thomas was going to be a Russian spy, just little hints here and there. I wouldn't want them to give it away, because that would take away from how good the reveal was, how random it was. It was truly anything but regular, but I feel like they could have developed him a little bit more in some episodes with like aerobics or athleticism that would have slightly hinted at the fact that Thomas was more than just a mama's boy. Because in episodes like Cool Cubed, imagine instead of Thomas getting that brain freeze, it could have been Rigby or Mordecai or Pops, and Thomas has to go inside of a head with them, and he's just able to do these backflips. He's able to like front flip over a canyon. He's able to like drop kick the brain freeze, and Mordecai and Rigby are like, how are you doing this? And he's just like, what? We're in a subconscious. I can move like this. And Mordecai and Rigby try and they're not able to. Just stuff like that could have hinted that Thomas was a little bit more, because I truly think that Thomas Fights Back is such an amazing episode where we get to showcase everything cool about Thomas and we get to learn a lot more about him and see that he is potentially more than he's leading on. I think that's a great episode, and if they had a few more episodes just like that, or they sprinkled Thomas into some more of the episodes where he was doing really cool stuff, he didn't need major roles, but maybe just some cool moments here or there, like Journey to the Bottom of the Crash Pit. He could have done something cool in that episode where he went down into the crash pit with them and was able to like help them barely make it out of the pit or something. Stuff like that. I feel like just a little bit more hints would have made Thomas's story way better and just more accepted with him becoming a Russian spy, because there would have been actual scenes instead of stuff that they planned in the real Thomas episode where he was apparently doing all of this different stuff, and it makes sense, but we didn't get to see any of that. I would have loved for them to have more hints of him actually going out and doing this stuff. And then personally, after the big reveal that Thomas is a Russian spy, I would have loved for him to stick around a little bit more. Maybe when he says that he's always lurking in the shadows, they could have done like random jokes where Thomas would like chime into a conversation and like tell them what to do, or he would randomly like be seen in the background fighting a CIA agent at the park or something. Just something like that to where Thomas doesn't have to fully leave the show, because Roger Craig Smith, he was always there all the way way to the season finale of season 8. He was always there, so he could have always voiced Thomas. Thomas could have had more roles instead of just returning for Guys Night 2, which I think is a really good episode, but I think they could have kept Thomas in the show for a lot longer and had him develop into a really cool like background character or just randomly appearing character instead of only getting one more episode. I think Thomas could have just been like this anything but regular spy that was always in the background. It would have been really cool. Benson and Audrey's relationship was really weird. I mean, the introduction to their relationship, Benson is unconscious for the majority of the time, and Audrey falls in love with this just unconscious man. And then we basically never see Audrey again until like the Christmas special, where they just talk about an ugly Christmas setter for like 30 seconds, and that's pretty much it. That's all we see of Audrey. And the weird thing is a lot of people say, oh, I can't believe like they just forgot about Audrey and Benson's relationship and then just brought it back up for a joke a few seasons later in The Real Thomas when Benson is going out with somebody else. No, because Audrey is in the background in so many different episodes. I didn't realize it until I was making that couple video and I did a little bit of research, but she's in the background for like 3 of the seasons and she just never does anything, never has a conversation with Benson. She is just genuinely always there, but never doing anything. Which is why I wish that they would go on to develop that relationship a little bit more, and actually, you know, the entire joke in The Real Thomas where they're talking about Benson breaking up with Audrey and how nobody remembers it. I think that could have made a really cool episode. Can you imagine if we got to see that episode where Benson was just heartbroken, so sad, and Skip says to help him train for a marathon? That could have been a great Benson episode, but no, we just get a one-off joke for it. Ooh, you know, that might be in the Lost Tapes. I'm going to take a bet. I'm going to bet somebody like $20 that is an episode in Lost Tapes, because doesn't that just embody everything that the Lost Tapes would be? A episode that was talked about but we didn't get to see? Oh, I just had a brain aneurysm. Jesus. But that would be really cool. I would enjoy that a lot. And just getting to see Benson and his reaction to getting broken up with Audrey, all that stuff would be a really good character arc for Benson, even though his character is already complete in the original series. Going back in the Lost Tapes and seeing that could be really cool. Honestly, I just wish they developed their relationship a little bit more so that, you know, Benson would have something to do love-wise before he meets Pam. I think that could have been better in the series. But hey, maybe the Lost Tapes will rectify this desire. When it comes to rewriting High Five Ghost, it's very simple. Just give him more lines. He's in 150 episodes. That's the majority of regular show, and half of the time he appears, 75 of those appearances, he doesn't say a single thing, even in major appearances, like the episode Slam Dunk, where he's playing a pivotal role in the first few basketball games that Mordecai and Rigby and Muscleman have, where he is literally playing in the game. He doesn't say a single thing. Why not? Give him one throwaway line. Recast J.G. Quintel to voice him so that he could say a few things here or there. We should not wait 5 seasons to get the first High Five Ghost episode in the entire series, and it's not even that good of an episode. It's just okay. And then they never talk about Celia ever again until like the end of the show and in a Terror Tales. It would have been so much better if maybe we got one more High Five Ghost episode with Celia, because they teased it and teased it and teased it, but we got none of that. There are so many different situations where High Five Ghost could have been a great character. The Dome Experiment is another great example where High Five Ghost becomes a de facto leader. Yeah, he literally took charge when Benson was out of the picture. So why not focus on something like that? Why not do something like that where Benson is going on a vacation retreat and High Five Ghost takes over, he's running the show for a little bit, and he does so good that High Five Ghost and Benson have to like play a game to see who's the best manager at the end or something. I don't know, I'm just spitballing episode ideas. It could have been cool. They could have used High Five Ghost in so many different ways because he was always there, and just giving him, I don't know, 1 or 2 sentences in the episodes he appears in could have helped his character a lot. Now, there are certain episodes in regular show that just ignore the lesson of what the episode is supposed to be about, especially with the endings, because it feels like it's just catering to one character and it doesn't actually teach a good lesson. If you were trying to teach a kid a lesson in this episode to teach them some kind of moral, they would definitely learn the wrong thing. The first episode that I would like to point this out is in the episode It's Time. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby both buy tickets to different movies. Mordecai wants to ask out Margaret, but he's just too nervous to do it, which leads to Rigby being like, I'm gonna ask out this girl, and just for the entire episode he's just like, I'm gonna tongue her. I want her so bad. I'm going to tongue Margaret. I like her a lot. And he's just doing all this to make Mordecai admit that he's jealous. But either way, it's still very dickish. It's just honestly not very enjoyable to watch. And this eventually leads to Rigby pushing Mordecai as hard as he can on a microwave. And because he's a tiny raccoon, nothing happens. And Mordecai pushes him the same. And because he is a tiny raccoon, Rigby falls off this microwave and literally dies. Mordecai has to rectify this by going back in time and saying that he wants to go to the movie with Rigby. What is the lesson that you're supposed to learn here? I had people attacking me in the comments for saying that Rigby was in the right throughout this entire episode because Mordecai was never going to ask out Margaret. You don't know that. Maybe he would have. Maybe he would have grown a pair and went out and done it if Rigby didn't already ask her out and wasn't constantly flirting with her, making Mordecai jealous. Of course he's going to be jealous. What is the lesson here? Because at the end of this episode, Mordecai, even though he already bought the 2 tickets, he has to come to the conclusion that, I can't ask out Margaret. I can't continue with that plan because this little shit weasel right here, this stupid raccoon, is going to cause me so many problems just because I don't want to go to the movie with him that we didn't already plan on going to. It would have been such a better ending if at the end, honestly, Mordecai got to try to ask out Margaret and maybe failed or something, but it didn't just cater to what Rigby wanted. Oh, Rigby went out of his way to buy these tickets, which is so hard because they work at the park and he worked so hard and he wanted to do bro time. That doesn't change the fact that Mordecai already bought tickets to a different movie and was already planning on doing something else. It makes no sense why Mordecai just has to drop what he wants to do just to cater to what Rigby wants. That's not a good lesson to have, and I would have definitely changed and rewrote this episode to where, I don't know, Rigby is understanding to the fact that Mordecai was already planning this and that they could maybe reschedule a day later. Does that make for good television? No, but I still think this is one of the most annoying episodes in the series, so I don't really care anyway. I hate this episode, but honestly, I just hate that Mordecai had to give in to what Rigby wanted, and that was the only solution to the episode. And then another episode that does the same exact thing is the episode Wall Buddy, where Rigby refuses for the entire episode to clean his mess in his room. He is just constantly, non-stop saying, no, it's our mess. And he tells Mordecai that the reason he won't clean it is because they're supposed to do stuff together, because they're bros. That's stupid. None of it's his mess. He didn't eat on the floor, eating trash and leaving it everywhere and just jumping on the trampoline and just causing a giant mess to form. It's just not a okay thing to do. And what am I supposed to get at the end of this episode when after Rigby literally tries to move all the trash over to Mordecai's side of the room to make Mordecai have to be the one to clean it, and then they have to do all this stuff with Wall Buddy, shut him down, all the trash is gone, and then Mordecai has to say, well, you can't fire us, Benson. We cleaned our mess. You're basically just saying that if you're butthurt enough and you're a crybaby enough, you'll get exactly what you want, even though it was your mess. This episode would have been so much better if at the end of it, Rigby learned his lesson, buckled down, and cleaned it all on his own. Wall Buddy is usually pointed at as the worst episode of season 5 for this exact reason, and I don't think it would be that bad of an episode. It would still be pretty mediocre if Rigby genuinely learned a lesson and cleaned the mess all on his own at the end. I think I would even use it to showcase Rigby's growth as a character, and when I talk about his arcs, I think it could have been way better, but no, they chose the worst possible path for that episode, and it just leaves me hating Rigby even in season 5. And then you have the episode Do Me a Solid, which is another great example of Rigby just being honestly so horrible because he doesn't want to go out on a date with Eileen, and Mordecai begs him to, and he gets 10 whole solids. So Rigby could choose to use these at any time, but he decides to use all 10 of them just to make Mordecai's life a living hell, just making him suffer. Eventually, Mordecai has to take a shit on the floor, and then at the end of this episode, Rigby, who recorded Mordecai doing this, is showing everybody at the park once again, and it's just supposed to be okay after that when he breaks the tape over his leg and they're just best pals again. No, I would have much rather had this episode end with a little bit of Rigby torture. I feel like it would have been way more satisfying and would have made this episode just so much more enjoyable if Mordecai, punched Rigby in the face or somehow leaked a video of Rigby, shoving an egg up his ass to test his allergens. I don't know, something like that would have made Rigby also suffer along with Mordecai, because there was no time in this entire episode where I thought Mordecai's suffering was valid. He genuinely just wanted help from his friend to go on a double date for 3 hours of his life, and Rigby tried to make him look like the worst person alive, and I think this episode could have been so much better if Rigby was just written to get his comeuppance at the end. When it comes to regular show going into space, I honestly think it could have been done a lot better if they removed some of the extra fluff that we really didn't need to see. This could have been a much shorter season, and although I love getting more regular show, I'm happy about it. I think people would have responded a lot more positively if we just stayed to that main story, just like from beginning to end, just focusing on this continuous story of Pops like being revealed as the chosen one, them going to the space tree, and then just going straight to his training, finding the ice tape, learning his past, going all the way to the series finale. I think it would have been responded to a lot better if they just focused on that instead of, taking us on this wild ride of just so many bad episodes. Like Brain of Evil, that did not need to happen. Can You Ear Me Now? That did not need to happen. Spacey McSpace Tree, that did not need to happen. And of course, there's some episodes that I think are genuinely really good, like Space Race or yeah, that's the only one I could think of right now. I really like Space Race. That's a filler episode, but I think that's good. But everything else is just honestly so mediocre, and I think if we just continued on that straightforward plot line, like going to Welcome to Space, cool brobots, and then going to the space tree, and then Anti-Pops is revealed, and he just starts attacking, and then they have to escape, and then they have to go on this journey to improve Pops' powers, I think people would have responded a lot better, and people would be ultimately more fond of that season, because all of those like random episodes that were just so mediocre, they just hold that season back so much, and I think if it was one continuous story, people would have liked it a lot more. There's the Anti-Pops problem, and I honestly think he would be so much better of a character if he wasn't just the opposite of Pops. Personally, I don't like the villains that are just the exact opposite. I think that's so annoying. Like, oh, jolly good show, let's make bad show, very bad show. Yeah, I don't like that, and his only other characteristic that was unique was leaving 1-star reviews at certain restaurants. That was all he really was. Yes, he was intimidating, but they could have made a very unique, like, own special characteristic villain. Like, imagine a Mr. Ross type villain with that charisma, that energy, being the final villain of regular show, having that same kind of vibe. That would have been responded to so much better than instead of just making, oh, let's just make evil Pops. It would have been so much more unique and so much more enjoyable to have a very charismatic villain, and Anti-Pops worked for the fear factor, but he was just lacking in charisma. So if I was to rewrite it, I would have made him unique, or just, take Mr. Ross, that basic formula, and make him basically the final villain, something like that. That could have been way cooler. I know this video is just a lot of me yapping, but if you have your own things that you would like to rewrite about regular show, make sure to comment them down below, and I would love to do a part 2 where I look at the things that my subscribers would like to rewrite about regular show and how they would go about it, because I think that could be a lot of fun. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.